Um, so yeah, this is our first episode. I hope to make this a weekly thing. So some of you guys are with the book club, and some of you guys aren't. But basically, this week we are reading Notes from the Underground. I want to be able to kind of do this weekly, talk about stuff that we read. Bring up stuff with current events, but mostly this is a product of just I've been trying writing, I've been trying other stuff, but I don't know. I just feel I feel like I need to do my part in some way for all of this stuff that we got going on. So if this is one way that I can disseminate information, then that's pretty cool. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'd like to make this kind of an interactive thing, get people calling in to talk, um, talking in the chat, cool stuff like that. And then, if they can just be, an hour kind of chat for once a week, and we can plan out readings and stuff. I think we could get a pretty good thing going. Um, so yeah, this week we read Notes from the Underground, which I think was a pretty fantastic book. Um, I did read Crime and Punishment last year by Dostoevsky. Very good book. I mean, it's consistently put as one of the best books of all time, and I would have to say, I agree. Somewhat hard to get through. Notes from the Underground, a lot quicker of a read. Not as much depth to it, but some really good stuff there. I guess the thing I really want to talk about is the character. Right, you have this guy. I guess I don't want to spoil the book for people who haven't read it, but I guess he's a real cretin. Is how I would describe. Not a stupid guy, right? And I think a lot of times we think of these dregs of society as kind of useless because they are unable to perform basic functions. But no, we have a guy. He's smart. He has a job. But I guess the problem is his sheer alienation, which is partly due to his own psychology and his interactions with others. And I guess that's one of the main points of the book is this character's misfortune due to his own inability to be likable, or are other people just treating him so poorly? And while I think that's a very surface level take, I think that importance is kind of how society can alienate somebody. You can have a person literally living underground in quotes when it is I mean, not literally underground, obviously, but this underground living where you just go to your job, you don't talk to anybody, you have no friends, you have no family kind of support, and how easy it can be to be trapped in that cycle. And I think, honestly, in today's day and age, I mean, we have more alienation than anything at all, right? Uh, I think we're all dealing with this kind of alienation, especially in these COVID times. I just think about what my daily daily schedule is. I mean, I go to work, I come home, I talk to strangers on the internet, and then I watch strangers live stream and play video games, and that's my main social interaction, which is pretty pathetic. And I still can. I mean, I have friends. I'm a social person. I'm not I'm not some fucking cretin like our book character. But this is the kind of alienation that our society is creating. I'm not going to give too much personal information, but let's just say that work has taken me very far from my friends and family. And we talk about how good it is that we have this technology that brings us together, right? Oh, we can FaceTime and Zoom and talk to all these people, our loved ones, but it's actually it's a it's a solution to a problem that we created, right? I mean, there was a time when you would never leave home. There was a time when you would be with your family your entire life. You would have this core group of people, and you'd be friends for the entirety of your lives, and you'd always be close together, right? Um, and I mean, I don't want to get in too much into anti-industrialism and things like that. This is a product of modernity, right? We are branching out, and you need to leave home in order to support yourself, right? There's just simply not enough work to go around in any small kind of community, right? Our rural communities, you're going to go off to college in the big city, then get a job in that city, and then never step foot back at home again, right? I mean, and I know from my experience with college, I know tons of small town kids where that's their exact experience. They're like, oh shoot, I'm never going back to Mississippi. I mean, now that you've seen the trappings of modern day life, well, yeah, you're completely alienating yourself from everything that made you you, though, right? I mean, your home and your family and the people you grew up with. I mean, that is your, I mean, that's your identity, right? I mean, for a good part of your life, right? I mean, then maybe you get a new group of friends with college, and maybe you can forge a new identity, right? But I think that's a part of you that you're really losing out in, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I just think reading Notes from the Underground and thinking of these ideas of alienation, and they really carry over, right? Um, Another really cool thing in the book, well, I guess I don't want to say cool, but a very well written part is the interaction with the prostitutes, right? And I think, I mean, I'm sure people smarter than me have gone through a very detailed analysis on the prostitute in literature. Um, and funnily enough, Dostoevsky's other major work, Crime and Punishment, I mean, a prostitute is a main character in that book as well, and a very similar role. Um, but we have two different protagonists, right? I think the protagonist for Notes from the Underground is, I mean, he's wholly unlikable and irredeemable, whereas, well, not to spoil anything, but Raskolnikov, he has a silver lining to him, right? Uh, so his interaction with the prostitute, right? He uh, he tries to be Captain Save a Ho, right? He says, "Hey, I'll save you from this lifestyle. Come to my place, uh, and you don't want this life, blah blah blah." The typical thing. I mean, this is probably a pretty big literature trope. I mean, even thinking in high school, you might have read Catcher in the Rye. I mean, that's a scene straight out of there. Um, and obviously, Catcher in the Rye didn't do it before Dostoevsky, but that's like it's a bit of a trope. Uh, but I think this is just interesting to see the kind of origin of that trope. But it's also a bit of a I don't want to say subversion, but maybe an inversion, right? Because normally you have um, the the man, right, trying to save the prostitutes, and I guess typically in the modern sense, it's always a failure, right? You fail to save the prostitutes, and you get black pilled, right, as far as society and degeneracy, blah blah blah, right? It's a little bit, I mean, it's a bit played out, right? I mean, you see it in Catcher in the Rye, you see it in rap music, um, but well, now in Notes from the Underground, we see he is saving the prostitute, right? And she actually does come to him and she wants to change. But now we have this inversion because the truth is he didn't want to save her. He wanted to feel power over something, right? And I think that's what makes the main character so much of a cretin, right? We talk about. I mean, I use this word to describe him, cretin. Well, a wholly unlikable and alienated person. Um, he is trying to do a good thing with a purely ulterior motive to make himself feel powerful, right? Uh, and the best thing about this, and the fantastic part of Dostoevsky's writing, is that in revealing this to her, right, when she shows up and he says, "I actually had no intention of saving you. I just wanted to feel better." Then the roles reversed, and just with this reveal of his mental state, she now knows that she is the more together person, right? And so now, in his effort to feel power over somebody, he's actually just revealed his own weakness, right? Uh, and and that's just, I mean, that's pretty amazing writing. And then he hands, in his last effort to reclaim dominance in the situation. As she leaves his home, she tries to shove money into his hand, and she just shoves the. Well, he thinks that she takes the money, and he feels like he gets the last laugh, the last upper hand, right? And and then he sees that she left the money on the floor. Literally, you didn't even give it back to him; just threw it on the ground. Like that's how little she respects help from such a disdainful person, um, which is pretty. I mean, that was just fantastic writing, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, it's not only is it a good story. I mean, you can kind of see these tropes carrying over into plenty of modern literature. Like I said, Catcher in the Rye. I'm thinking some of the, like Quentin Tarantino's True Romance, right? He makes an effort to save the prostitute, and I don't even remember how that movie ends, but I think he succeeds, right? Good movie. You should check that out. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts on Notes from the Underground. Uh, and so next week, for anybody interested in keeping this going or participating, we're going to read Faust, right? So Faust. Uh, well, we usually do readings every 2 weeks, but I think we could talk about it, once a week if we want to keep this going, right? So maybe read Faust book one for next week, and then book two for the week after. Prostitute part reminded me of the movie Taxi Driver from Funky Clock. Yeah, that is a. I've actually never seen Taxi Driver. Um, it's almost a running joke. Me and my fiance were always looking for movies to watch, and I always want to suggest like dark movies. I always say, hey, let's watch Taxi Driver, and she just it's like become an inside joke that she refuses to watch it, and I just want to watch it um, because I hear it's. I mean, it's exactly like that. It's that dark, taking revenge on modernity for what it's done, right? Uh, yeah, I gotta check out that movie sometime, and yeah, from what I understand, it follows that same trope. Uh, oh, so I was saying next week we're talking about Faust. So maybe do book one for next week, and then the following week we can talk about book two. Uh, and actually, I want to talk a little bit about Faust, because I think in these circles you kind of hear this word all the time, and the question is, what does this word actually mean when we talk about Faustian, the Faustian world spirit, which I believe, well, I know Spengler uses it a lot, but I think it is derived from Spengler, that is Oswald Spengler, and his Decline of the West. I tried, I'm about a third of the way through Decline of the West right now. Um, Really interesting book. Lots and lots of detail. I mean, it is not an easy read. I mean, after trying, I mean, like I said, I'm a third of the way through the unabridged version. I would say I would recommend the abridged version just because there's almost too much information for one person to process. So if you want to check that out, which I do highly recommend, though. But yeah, if we're talking about Faustian world spirit, what the hell does that mean? Well, obviously it's derived from this play, and it is a play, Faust, right? And so I did a little bit of research on this. So Faust, written by Johann something von Goethe. I think it's Goethe or Goethe. Who knows? Somebody will correct me at some point, and I'll figure it out. Uh, but so he wrote Faust, but that's actually not the original story of this Faust character, right? The character of Faust actually, I think it even goes before the 1500s, but in the 1500s, Christopher Marlowe wrote Dr. Faustus, which is, I mean, they're essentially the same character in a different take on the same story of Faust. And I guess, I mean, this isn't like a spoiler. I mean, this is like the back sleeve of the book cover. You have a guy who's some type of philosopher, alchemist. Morpheus says Faust is related to Fauci. I didn't know that. I think that might be incorrect, but I'll have to use my esoteric Aryan Vril sensors to see if that's true or not. Um, but so you have this Faust character who is a um, he's like an alchemist philosopher and basically makes a deal with the devil in order to obtain um, infinite knowledge. Gonna have to do an early life search on that one. Well, this is actually funnily enough. I'm gonna loop back to this. So this Faust character, who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for power, knowledge, right? Um, so first written about by Christopher Marlowe, and this is a bit of anecdote on Marlowe. Is I first heard about him if you read The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, another book I highly recommend. Um, he has a whole chapter on Freemasonry and how that kind of took over in Europe and like Kabbalism and esotericism with that. So this Christopher Marlowe guy, he was a Freemason, I believe, a Kabbalist and esotericist. But I mean, don't immediately think that makes them subverted or whatever. I mean, I think there's plenty of Mason writers who are still good writers. I mean, I can think of, I haven't actually read him, but the Maestra, I mean, he's supposed to be fantastic, and he was technically a Mason. Uh, but this Marlowe character, he was a Mason, and this is a really interesting anecdote. He actually wrote a play called The Jew of Malta, um, and it was a hi, Al Mysiv. I'm glad to see you. Um, so, Jew of Malta, which was quite an anti-Semitic play. Um, uh, I don't know the exact details, but basically, going through a lot of typical typical um, Jewish stereotypes, cheap, subversive, etc. So yeah, kind of based maybe was Marlowe based? I don't know, but I guess he wrote this whole play that was anti-Jew, right? And so what a lot of people don't know is this was actually the inspiration behind Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Um, and some people read Merchant of Venice and this Shylock character, and they're like, "Oh, Shakespeare based? Was Shakespeare based? Is he anti-Semitic?" And the answer is actually no, because this was the pro-Semitic version of Marlowe's anti-Semitic Jew of Malta, right? So there's actually, I mean, Marlowe and Shakespeare were contemporaries. And you've never heard of Marlowe, and you've definitely heard of Shakespeare. So what does that tell you? I don't know. I think there's some implication there that maybe the person who was pro-Semitic got more famous. I don't know. Maybe that's a connection. But yeah, so this Merchant of Venice was actually supposed to be pro-Semitic, and I mean, if you actually read the book and read into it, I mean, I had to read Merchant of Venice in high school. I mean, you have the whole speech at the end, kind of, trying to get you to feel sympathy for Shylock. Hath not the Jew eyes, etc. I mean, obviously, he couldn't be like, oh yeah, Jews are great, because I mean, I don't think the world at that time was quite ready for that kind of a bold statement. But this subtle, like, actually Jews are humans too, and we should look at their side of the story. I mean just that little kind of a thing. I mean, that's Shakespeare, and that's just one of the ways he was somewhat subversive. So yeah, that's just Marlowe and Shakespeare, and then tying that back to Faust. So this Marlowe guy, he's actually kind of interesting. I mean, you could kind of say he's a based figure by our standards, perhaps, even though he was a Freemason. Um, so he wrote Faust, and then you have Goethe in the 1800s writing. Oh, sorry, Marlowe wrote Doctor Faustus, uh, who is related to Dr. Fauci apparently. Um, and then Goethe in the 1800s writing Faust, and now you have Spengler, who uses this Faust character to characterize the Western world spirit, as he calls it. So I'm winding all that back to say, what does this mean? What is Faustian world spirit? And I'm not going to claim to be some kind of a esoteric expert. I mean, I kind of just started reading stuff and I put the pieces together. So I guess I'm just going to try and illustrate that as best as I can. But so you have this character Faust who sold his soul to the devil for more knowledge and power, right? Um, and Spengler, from what I've read, seems to characterize this Western spirit as expansion of space, right? So uh, a lot of people in these circles talk about Faustian spirit as like this will to conquer, right? Almost like a collective spiritual will to power, right? So if a person is exerting their will to power, the people, the Voke is exerting their Faustian spirit, right? Um, so, something like Western civilization is destined to expand and conquer, right? And I think some people when they talk about Faustian spirit being good, they forget the fact that um, Faust sold his soul to the devil, right? He made a deal with the devil that was not. Uh, I mean, well, obviously deals with the devil are not good. So if we're going to characterize our society as one that has made a deal with the devil in order for endless expansion and power, maybe that isn't the way we should view ourselves. Or well, we can view ourselves however we want. Is how we should say how we should be, right? Because I think a lot of people are saying, oh, we need to reclaim the Faustian spirit, right? We need to, um, and I mean, I'm not going to, uh, I guess, I want to, keep up optics, but I think there's certain things you have to talk about, in blatant terms, and I'm not gonna just beat around the bush because of optics, but they say, the Aryan race needs to, they need to exert this Faustian spirit. They need to conquer all the other races. Blah blah blah. We need to expand to space, right? We need to have the best Aryan technology, right? All of this stuff. And I mean, I look at this and I think this is so, I mean, it's fucking retarded. Uh, I mean, this Faustian spirit, right? Well, the whole thing that Spengler talks about is that the Faustian, I mean, the book is called The Decline of the West, right? So if the Western spirit is the Faustian spirit, he's talking about the decline of the Faustian spirit, right? So if we look and see, it has very, if you think about it, Aryans are just white Jews. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Um, but so if we're going to, we want to be characterized by this Faustian spirit, well, we are selling our souls to the devil, and we can see actually that this is what this is what has happened. I mean, in order to create this technological global beast of a Western society we have had to sell our souls to the devil, right? We've lost everything, that makes us human, and we're suffering from this alienation that I talked about earlier. Um, we are alienated from each other, our families, our friends, our race. I mean, I'll be blatant about that. How many people are racially conscious? Well, how many white people are racially conscious? There's plenty of non-whites that are. But yeah, we have this alienation, and then this is so much of a product of this modern expansion, right? So in order to take this material gain, we have higher standard of living ostensibly, right? Oh, we have more uh, iPads and cheap burgers and shit like that. Better health care, so we can abort more children. Um, yeah, it's awesome. We're really living better. We're really happier people. We didn't make us deal with the devil or anything. Uh, so yeah, when I hear people talking about we need to reclaim this Faustian spirit, I think the opposite, right? I think we need to destroy the Faustian spirit, and I think we need to follow Spengler and say the West is declining, and some new spirit is going to have to replace that, right? He talks about this um, difference between the Western spirit and the classical spirit. Classical being Greco-Roman, right? Um, and so while the Western spirit is concerned with infinite space and expansion, um, the classical spirit is concerned with the here and now, right? The concrete, the immediate. Um, and I mean, you could say in the philosophical terms, Platonism, right? You have being versus becoming, right? So the Western spirit is all about becoming, right? There is no become; it is just constant becoming. There's always more to conquer. There's always more power to exert in the world. Whereas being, as classical, was about being, right? It was about we have these small polises, yeah, plural of polis, right? You have the Greek city-state, the polis, and that is where, I mean, it's like the smallest localization, and that's all you care about, right? I mean, historically, the Greeks didn't even see themselves as one people. You know, Spartans saw themselves as Spartans, and Athenians saw themselves as Athenians, and they really didn't have much will to conquer, right? The the Spartans had a great army, but it was more to defend themselves than to actively conquer. And I mean, the only time, uh, you know, you saw war, right, was like civil war when one power got too powerful and was infringing on other powers. Um, well, that is up until the Persian War when they had to unite against the Persians, and that's a whole other thing to get into. But you think just basic Greek life, it was very small and decentralized, right? You're just in your small. If you just think how a Greek person lived, it was in this small polis, um, very rural. You're gonna, talk with a very small number of people, and you're not going to explore the world, And that's the thing you hear today, like, oh, go out, explore the world, see everything, and then come back. Well, what's the other thing? Don't they often say don't come back? They say leave this small town and never come back. This is a dead end town. There's nothing here. I mean, I think that's such a subversion, and I think speaking as an American, I mean, I think some of the best things in this country are small town America, um, and the kind of people you meet there and the relationships you see there. I know I've traveled all through the United States, and some of the places I feel like the most welcome and happy are, a small one-horse town of 1,000 people, where everybody knows each other, and you just got a mom and pop shops everywhere, and no fucking Walmart. So uh, I guess when I think of being versus becoming, I think we've been so focused on becoming this Faustian spirit that maybe it's time we return to being, right? And I mean, if I were to say anything about, where we're headed, I mean, well, we know that the West is going to decline, and we've reached that point. The question is, what comes after this? And I think we can't listen to these people that are like, oh, reclaim this Faustian spirit. We need to reawaken the Aryan race. It's like, no. I mean, we can reawaken the Aryan race, but that doesn't mean we need to conquer the world. Maybe it means we need to conquer ourselves. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe that sounds like some fucking new age bullshit. Conquer ourselves. What does that mean? Well, I mean, I think it's the battle of our generation, and I say our, late millennials, early Zoomers, is going to be learning to be content with less. Almisive says, "Take back our lands." Well, I mean, obviously, you have a prerequisite of taking back our lands, right? I mean, we don't want to be a land of immigrants, and we need a homeland, right? But I'm saying, that doesn't mean we bring the whole world under global Aryan subjugation, right? And I think a lot of people would say that, and we want an Aryan moon base, right? I think that's fucking retarded. Space is cringe. Space is it's literally a subversion of this Faustian will, right? People have this. You see fucking memes like, uh, "Oh, born too early to explore the world, born too late to explore the galaxy," right? Um, well, how about explore neither of those things? How about fucking explore your fucking neighborhood and talk to fucking people that are right next to you and learn to have a happy, content life. Space Force, more like Gay Force. And yes, exactly, the Gay Force. Um, Learn to have a happy, content life without this Faustian, this Faustian pressure, right? You don't need to conquer to be happy. You need to have close connections with friends and family. You need to have a certain degree of self-sufficiency. And this is what I kind of mean by conquering ourselves. Conquering ourselves and like live in a way that is independent, right? Um, I mean, how can you say that you're an independent person when every single thing that you have in your life was given to you by, this multinational industrial system that you don't really play a big part in, right? Um, how does that make you an independent person? Um, and I'm not saying that in order to be independent, you need to be fucking Ted Kaczynski, all right? But I'm just saying, uh, I think you could exert a certain amount of will to power um, without needing this bullshit idea of conquering, right? You can exert a will to power at a very small scale. And I think, we can do that in small communities, in small towns, and, change our way of living. And I mean, realistically, I think this is probably the way things are headed, regardless. I mean, whether we want to or not, things are changing. Um, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here probably believe that, America is on its way out, collapse imminent and all that. But the question is, what comes after? What are we going to build after? And I think we need to avoid the Faustian spirit and uh, come up with a new spirit or return to a classical spirit. They focus on being, right? I think the age of the Faustian man is over, and a new man shall rise. Um, so that's a long tangent on the Faustian spirit. So when we actually read Faust, hopefully we can talk more about that and what we think, and whether this idea of Faustian is an accurate term. Whether Spengler's onto something or whether it's bullshit or what. Um, so yeah, I guess that's the gist of what I wanted to talk about today. And I think it gives a lot for us to talk about and read about next week. So read Faust. Um, if you want to, you could try taking a stab at Decline of the West. I've been making my way through slowly, and it's quite good. Um, yeah, so I'll probably end the stream unless other people want to add comments, or we could also do voice chat in Discord if anybody has interest and is on the Discord. Just mention it in the chat. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I thought this was pretty fun. If you guys are uh, interested at all in doing this again, so Funky Clock says, "Aren't there mathematical formulas in Decline of the West? Or am I confusing that with something else?" Well, there's a whole chapter on mathematics, right? And he talks about classical versus Western mathematics, which is actually pretty interesting. Uh, if you look at, oh, okay, I see you're in the VC. I will hook you up in a second. Uh, so, aren't there mathematical formulas in Decline of the West? Yeah, he has a whole chapter on mathematics because he's talking about uh, like things like the Greeks didn't have rational numbers, right? So we have, if you think of the Western sense of mathematics, between 1 and 2, there's an infinite amount of numbers, right? You have 1.1, 1.2, 1.0000001, etc. for infinity, right? An infinite number of rational numbers in between. Well, the Greeks did not have that. They had very concrete numbers. They had 1, 2, 3, 4. They didn't even have negative numbers, I don't think. Um, and so this is very being focused, right? You have um, only things that are concrete, tangible, understandable, and already come to being, right? They are fully fleshed out ideas. um, then, in the Western sense, you have the concept of infinity and rational numbers, and it is inherently focused on becoming, right? There is no math is so much less concrete, right? Math is now theoretical. It is focused on situations that aren't even realistic, and it is, and we, I mean, intentionally create scenarios that don't make any sense, right? I mean, so many of these famous math problems, like something like, oh, does a set of all sets contain itself? It's like it's a fucking stupid question, really, because I mean, it might be a fun thought experiment in a conceptual mathematical way, but relevant um, there's no relevant mathematical application in real life, right? So you have this Greek system of math that is extremely practical, extremely focused on being, and then the Western sense that is totally focused on becoming, right? And through the mathematics, that shows our difference in world spirit and the way we view civilization. All right, on my Civ, I'm gonna hook into Discord and start talking to you. On my Civ, how you doing? All right, I don't know. I don't know if you're gonna play through the desktop or through the microphone. So the audio on this part of the video might suck, but who cares?
I can kind of hear myself, but like should be fine.
All right, cool.
I mean, I don't mind hearing myself, but it's very quiet.
Okay, well I turned your volume up, so hopefully that makes it louder.
Okay, so first thing I was interested in is this Faustian spirit you were saying. I didn't even know this was a fucking spirit like that's just conquering out. Did this spirit come from Faust, or was it something that we always had in ourselves, and Faust was like the one to like spearhead it or something?
Well, I think I mean, that's exactly what Spengler's talking about. He says that you have this, I guess, a manifestation of collective will, right? And he even says in the book, he says the Faustian spirit would exist without Faust, right? If this book had never been written, that doesn't change the fact that that will exists. It's just the fact that because the will existed, you had somebody come along in history that could perfectly articulate that will in literature. Um, does that make sense?
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess we have the Faustian will inside of us, but it just took one man to articulate it, right?
Yeah. So the whole idea of the West conquering out was that you could say that was very well. God damn it, I'm fucking going crazy. You could say that was very manifested. That manifested itself very nicely in the colonial age, huh?
Uh,
Since the West basically owned the fucking world.
right, and I think we have varying degrees of fondness at which we look back upon the colonial age. I mean, we might say that was the peak of Western civilization, but then we can look at today and say how many problems that we currently have could have been avoided if we didn't do that, if we didn't colonize all these places. So, I mean, you could quite literally say it was a deal we made with the devil. We got all these material riches after a short time, but now we have to deal with the repercussions, right?
So what I'm most interested in, do you think that the colonial age was a good thing, or do you think it was just spearheaded by our fellow whites to just get to the age that we are now? Because I kind of thought that it was kind of. I thought the whole white man's burden thing was kind of a good thing because it seemed benevolent in its will and its idea that we should bring civilization to all these barbarians and whatnot. But then I look and but then I can kind of see where you're coming from and the fact that well, look at where we are now, and it's kind of a problem that we made and that we could have just said no to, but we just went along with it as since colonialism was essentially a fashion statement.
Yeah, and I mean this is a very good question. I think you're going to get a lot of varying answers. And I guess I've talked before. I think you have this difference between white supremacy versus white racial consciousness, right? I mean, you can be conscious of the differences between white people and other people without having to say white people deserve to be conquering over all other races, and we um, we need to subjugate everybody else, right? Um, and I think that goes into it. I think you have these Wignat types, as I would call them, and they're like, oh, colonization was based because we took advantage of all these lesser races, and that's exactly what white people need to do, and put all the lesser races in their place. Whereas I'm saying to take a different perspective and say, I mean, so if you look at what was good about colonization, right? You had um, this collective drive, this collective will that was executed, right? We say this Faustian will to conquer, and then we did conquer, right? So conquering happened, and we felt really good about it, and a lot of people, self-actualized in a way that was, we could say very Nietzschean, right? The Ubermensch enacted their will to power, which is one mode. That's only one mode of um, looking at history and psychology, right? And I'm saying that I think that was a very well. I'm saying, and feel free to disagree. I'm sure plenty of people will. I think that is a very bad way to look at um, how we should live and what the goals of life are, right? I think this conquering was, I mean, it was very short-sighted. And I mean, you imagine like, oh, my ancestors, like imagine how they felt, um, traversing unknown territory and conquering the people there and doing all this and setting up civilizations. I mean, okay, that's really cool. And like, uh, I mean, if we could do that in some way now that was comparable and not talking about space, then maybe that could still be a way to self-actualize. But in the same way that capitalism can be good in a short term, but will always be characterized by this, endless growth that is just not feasible, right? This will to conquer is also unfeasible, right? And it can be really cool and really awesome for a while, but eventually it's going to hit a wall, and now you're stuck with just a bunch of civilizations that you can't control and a bunch of people that you don't want to be around, and your own people are now have no way of self-actualizing because you've defined your mode of self-actualization based on conquering, and you can't do that anymore. So now that's kind of how you get this fucking generation of you know uh, pathetic last man types in a Nietzschean sense. Your soy boys that get off the fucking Marvel movies because it's uh, this voyeuristic or vicarious um, this vicarious exertation of this will to power, right? They're not doing it themselves. They're watching people do it on a screen, and it's some poor facsimile of self-actualization, and it's bullshit, right? And we all know it's bullshit. Um, so I mean, that's a really long-winded answer to say no. I don't think colonialism was good. I think in the same way as capitalism, I think it can provide really good times for a very short amount of time, but in a grand scale, long term way of looking at things, it was very destructive to collective psychology.
Kind of like apartheid was pretty ambitious, but if it would have worked, man, just think about it. Think about what we could have accomplished.
What could we have accomplished? Well, yeah, we accomplished such great things as Johannesburg and Cape Town, which are really, really fantastic
Really
cities.
awesome. Yeah, really awesome place to live now.
Everybody comes across the world. They really want to see Johannesburg. Just a great place.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, we're even at the point where even the cities that were great, your Londons, your New Yorks. I mean, look at these fucking places. They're shitholes.
Oh yeah.
And like, is this the ultimate result of the Faustian will? We get a golden age and then an inevitable decline. Well, I mean, it must be really fun to live in the golden age, but I sure as fuck don't want to live in the decline. So it's like this is kind of a meme answer, but they say like um, drinking beer is stealing happiness from tomorrow and using it today, right? So it's almost like this Faustian will was stealing happiness from um, their ancestors and using it then, right? So they took all of our happiness so they could have their golden age, and now we're living in shit. So thanks, ancestors. But I'm not going to look down on my ancestors. Don't think I'm doing that. Okay, we are ancestor respecters here. All right. Well, would you guys have any other topics? I said Morpheus also joined us in chat. So for those of you watching the stream, we got more homies.
I took the idea that
I joined so people wouldn't be shy. I don't know if they can hear me in stream. I have it muted because I didn't want to hear your voice twice. But
well, like I said, this is a work in progress. I can hear you, so at the very least, I hope that you're coming through my screen. So
might be. Let me see. Oh yeah, it's just like it's probably like a 5-second delay.
It's a pretty
yeah, we're coming
delay.
through. I just heard it.
Which is, I mean, that's normal for streams. But what were you trying to like? You were trying to kind of integrate the book club into having a discussion at the end.
Yeah, because I think it's one thing to read, but then it's another thing to actually try and use it to get ideas out there and expand on that. And I don't know, it's just good to fucking do something, man. I mean, the world's a shitty place, so if we could just fucking disseminate any kind of information to our side in any kind of intelligent way, I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm not a fucking artist. I try to do some writing, I said, but it's hard to get the writings out there, and it's hard to get people to read a fucking 5-page fucking thing. And I don't mean to just say people are dumb or whatever, but it's just hard. I mean, you got a busy life. So many people are into the streaming now, and some people just throw it on in the background, and I mean, if you can just get a few people interested, I mean, and I think you could disseminate information in an effective way, and I guess that's just what I'm trying out. See if anybody's interested.
Yeah, good work. Definitely, you got to try. There's I forget which. It is like a JFK quote. It's like everything seems impossible until you try or some bullshit. But it is true. I mean, it's similar to how I started this business. It's like everything looks fucking. It's an uphill battle, and then once you get a couple years into it, it's basically like you just hit it in stride, and and then everything just kind of you build a following pretty soon, and then it just depends on you find things that work, you find things that don't. Trial and error through that shit. I mean, but it's like starting is the hardest part. Once you start, then it's kind of like it gets a little bit easier. But I guess I mean you just have to try to find like what avenues you want to take with it. You know, try to see like how are you gonna get it out there more mainstream for people to see, and then because it definitely could take off. I don't know about anybody else doing this currently, so could be definitely could be something there.
Yeah. I mean, there's a decent amount of like right wing streamers, but I mean, so much of it's fucking. I mean, they got like game streamers and like politics streamers. I mean, that's cool. I mean, like talking politics is always good, but I think it's sometimes very it can be like surface level. If we can get more, you know, I mean, who's talking about fucking Faustian spirit? This kind of like wide ranging philosophical ideas, and I think the best way to articulate ourselves going forward isn't going to be like, I mean, it's a dead end battle trying to fight over fucking news headlines. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, fucking Biden is sending fucking kids to die in the Middle East. Fucking you stupid liberals, don't you see this sucks? It's like that's not going to convince anybody, man, dude. You need to like.
It's like that Ben Shapiro take on it. It's like, look what they're doing. It's like, are you surprised? Aren't you surprised that they're doing this?
Or this, or they talk like, oh, hey, hypocrites, fuck you didn't like the police 6 months ago, and now you're begging for the police to shoot Trump supporters in the head. It's like, okay,
yeah.
It's like, cool, you pointed out the hypocrisy. What happens if they don't care? Like, what's
Literally.
your next step? So I mean, like if we can.
There's nothing there,
Yeah.
There's really nothing there. There's no substance, and that's literally all of like that's all of fucking conning. Like, that's all they talk about. It's like doing it different from that is probably the best place to be.
Right, and then you have
my take on that was.
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my take on it was. You know this it's happening. You know all this horrible shit's happening, but I just looked at it and like, if I continually just seep into stuff and just talk about it, or not even talk about it, just think about it so much that it becomes part of my life, it could just drag you down. And so I kind of got it from my parents, I'd say, where you recognize these things are happening, but you don't fully make them part of your life. You make it understand that this is happening and that this is bad, and that you work towards fixing it somehow. If it doesn't have to be in your lifetime, it's like that saying, you plant a tree, but you're not going to sit in its shade. It's that idea, I think.
Yeah, and I think we need to focus on positive conceptions of the right, because so often we focus on being. I mean, I don't know if reactionary is the right word.
The doomer.
Well, and also like we don't want to be like anti-left. Like that can't be our only like our defining point, right? We need to have some kind of positive substance, right? So I mean, start like articulate it as, instead of being anti-left, be pro-family or pro-God or pro-nation, right? Like nationalism is a powerful word. It's a more powerful word than anti-communist, right? That's just a non-fucking word. And anybody that is going to describe their political beliefs as anti-communist, you've already failed, right? That means you are just working in a communist framework, right?
Puts you in.
Because what?
I think it just boxes you in to, your perception of being able to think. Yeah. There's so much out there, and it's like all you've been given your whole life, at least as an American, is like Nazi, socialism, and capitalism. That's it. There's no other forms of government. Even it being that basic, they still don't have a good understanding of any of them, and how they're divided and how they're different, even. But It just starts with I don't know, just not taking. I mean, you can. There's a lot you can learn from the failures of conning, especially this time around, and why so many people. I mean, of course, they were set up to fail, but
well, yeah, that's
there's a
the
lot
thing.
of
It's
things
hard to
that.
call it a failure when it was.
Yeah, yeah, it was basically set up to fail, but it's like you can you can kind of see like don't do the things that they do, where they just classify like Orange Man bad. It's just like Orange Man bad on the right, um, and it's like Biden bad, Democrats bad, like
Yeah.
like yeah, and it's just similar to that. I'm also playing Star Wars right now, so I'm a bit retarded.
It's okay, man. We're all retarded, so.
Yeah, that's something we can kind of get around too. Like bring everyone around, everyone being retarded. It's like it's a common denominator we can all agree on.
Return to
like,
retard. Revolt against the modern world.
I'll become fucking Amprims.
Let's all get lobotomized.
Yeah. It's like we're all MK Ultra victims here.
All right. Well, I'm trying to keep the stream to about an hour, so I'm thinking about wrapping up here. So if you guys have any final thoughts, say them now.
I just want to say the gamer word, but I won't do it.
You better not say the game. I'll have to edit you out. So.
I won't do it.
All right.
I thought of colonialism in one way as a continuation of that ancient Indo-European spirit of like how we had what do you call it? We had not shamans, hierarchies. We had very very specific hierarchies that are kind of like India, the Indian caste system. There we go, the caste system, and how they kind of became the aristocracy of so many different nations, all the way to like Japan, right? And I kind of thought of colonialism as like a new way of doing that, and maybe there's some things wrong with that, but I kind of looked at it and thought this is like a continuation of it. That's what I thought, at least. And maybe there's some truth in that, but at the end of the day, it still got subverted to the point to where, well, here we are now. The empires are gone, and our nations are getting strangled.
Well, actually, I didn't know that at all about the Indians.
The caste system?
Well, I mean, I didn't know. I mean, so you're saying that Indians became leaders like throughout?
I mean, like the Indo-Aryan invasions of India, right? It was very specific people of fair skin and whatnot. They conquered their way into India, then they became the caste. They became the ruling class. That's how I looked at it, like a continuation of that in a new form.
I actually didn't. I didn't know that at all. But yeah, you have to post some sources on that. That's interesting.
Most of this I got, or the whole Indo-European invasions of most of the entire world. That's from Masha Logos and his series of subverted history.
Oh, cool. Okay. I haven't watched through all those videos, but I'll have to give it a
They're good stuff.
Yeah, we got a few people from Asha's server that we're watching. So yeah, also trying to get the TPP people involved. So yeah. All right, but I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. Well, thanks everybody who watched, and I'm probably gonna upload this to YouTube. So yeah, you could either rewatch or try and spread it to other people, and we'll see if we get a decent group going for next week.